And welcome back to the Schup&Skroce extravaganza. I'm your host, Schup, and I have a guest with me this evening. He has been on the show before, but he's got a football brain. That is Mr.
I was to say my name. It's Christian. It's your boy. I'm back, baby. We're back talking Super Bowl. This is so exciting. It's been a while since you and I have gotten together to do this. But what a better time.
It has been a while, so much so I think you forgot your own name there for a second. But yeah, we always talk good football. So our conversations are always, and yeah, what better time to do it than right before the big game, Chiefs versus 49ers. If like somebody had told me that before the season, I would have been like, yeah.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Actually, I don't remember who it was, but I remember seeing before the season that there was a guy that predicted the last two Super Bowls, the matchup, and he said Chiefs 49ers. And I said there was no way he can do it again, and he did it again. So shout out to that guy, whoever you are.
I think it was Peter Strager. Strager. Yeah. He's gotten a few right in a row. It's kind of weird.
3 in a row now.
Yeah.
So either we listen to him next year, or and the luck runs out, or we don't listen and he gets it again.
Now everyone knows. Yeah.
But that's a pretty big headline. But other than that, based on the game itself or anything beyond the game, what is the biggest headline going into the Super Bowl?
I mean, I think for starters that it's a rematch. I think kind of going into that conference championship weekend, there were two rematches that could have happened: Ravens 49ers and Chiefs 49ers. This one being the more recent one, Super Bowl 54, which the Chiefs won 31-20. That was Mahomes and Andy Reid's first Super Bowl of their careers and in Kansas City. And so that's obviously, I think, the biggest headline coming in is, the differences between the teams and also the similarities since that last Super Bowl. I think it's really interesting to look at what the 49ers have done since that game and trying to get back, because it's been a few years since they've been back. The Chiefs, this is now their third time back since that one. This is the Niners' first time back. And the big thing for the Niners is that they tried really, really hard to get better at quarterback. They traded up a lot to get Trey Lance. That didn't work out, but they got our boy Brock Purdy with the last pick in his drafts. And so that is one of the biggest differences. And yeah, I mean, to me, that aspect of it being a rematch, and a pretty recent one, a lot of similar players on both teams, is what stands out the most.
Yeah, the fact that it is a rematch and how long of a road it was for the 49ers to get back to this point does make it very intriguing. I think what interests me most about this Super Bowl is the way that these rosters are set up. On one hand, you have the 49ers who, by all means, I don't think it's even a debate that they have the best roster in football. They're loaded all across the board, all positions. And with having Brock Purdy on such a cheap contract has allowed them not only to retain these guys, but add guys like, Javon Hargrave and, get Chase Young to like bolster the rest of their roster and really make them such a dominant team. And then on the other side, you have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, right? I mean, the defense has been fantastic, but in terms of names across the board, it's nowhere near as many superstars on the roster. And in fact, it's probably one of the worst, maybe the worst roster that Mahomes has had since he came into the NFL. And yet they're back in the Super Bowl. So it's going to be a war of the super team versus the superstar duo, head coach and quarterback.
Yeah, not dissimilar to last year when it was the Eagles and the Chiefs. I actually think the Chiefs are better this year than they were last year. I think, like you said, their defense, I think, is a lot better. Steve Spagnuolo, their defensive coordinator, is out of his mind right now, just shutting down opposition's offenses. That's going to be a big matchup, that San Francisco offense versus that Kansas City defense, because San Francisco, the other big name that's different is Christian McCaffrey. He was not there in that last Super Bowl against the Chiefs. And I think besides Patrick Mahomes, he's definitely the best player in this game. He's for sure the best player in this game that's not a quarterback, and his impacts on what that Niners offense is going to look like and how they're going to combat that strong Chiefs defense is, I think, really where the conversation for this game starts.
Mm-hmm. McCaffrey has made the difference on his own in a couple of these games already, especially that Packers game when he broke that big run to really turn the tide in the Niners' favor. And like we said, the Niners are loaded everywhere, but especially on offense, they got playmakers at every position. But out of all of these big time playmakers, you got Ayuk, Debo, McCaffrey, Purdy, Kittle, Trent Williams. Which of these guys do you think is the biggest X factor? Like his performance will make the biggest impact on if the 49ers win this game or not.
It's such a cop out to say McCaffrey, but like he's the obvious answer in terms of like they should be giving him at least 20 to 25 touches in this game. I have a feeling the Niners are going to want to get it out of Brock Purdy's hand as much as possible. And so McCaffrey is the big one. But honestly, for me, I think Ayuk is what I would say is the biggest X factor in that Debo and McCaffrey, they can kind of do similar things. They can run the ball. They're very good after catch. But that's one thing that the Chiefs defense is really good at defending. They limit that that yards after catch, almost better than any other defense in the league. And so you think about Ayuk, he's a guy that can really attack vertically, whereas Debo and McCaffrey are going to be attacking short and intermediate. Ayuk is where they can go to really take the top off of that Chiefs defense. And so how they get him involved, to me, is going to be one of the more interesting things, especially considering that the Chiefs are going to be going after Brock Purdy all game long. I'm wondering if they'll be able to protect him enough to give him the time to look downfield to get the ball to Ayuk.
That's going to be a big one. We've seen Purdy not be very perfect this postseason. He's made some mistakes. Those mistakes didn't cost him because they were dropped interceptions. But he hasn't been perfect at all. So, yes, the 49ers are going to have to do absolutely everything they can to aid him because he's not going to go off for as many like rushing yards as he did, in the last game, right? I'm really looking at George Kittle to be that safety net over the middle that he has been during this postseason. He's been dominant the entire season, arguably the best tight end in the NFL this year. He's been getting open and blocking extremely well. He's going to have to make an impact with catching the ball because, like you said, the Chiefs are very good at limiting yards after the catch, and they've got some really good corners, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But Kittle is like sometimes I feel like that forgotten man in this offense. Like when he's on, he can be really on. And to touch on a guy that we didn't touch on, Debo Samuel, I hope he stays healthy because it seems like every now and then he'll just get dinged up in a game and miss time. And hopefully by now that shoulder is completely healed up because he's such an aggressive, speedy, like electric player that they're going to need some splash plays from him if they want to win this game.
Definitely. And I think looking at that side of the field, the other side, Chiefs defense, I'll put that question back to you. Who are you looking at on the Chiefs defense as a big X factor? Who do you think the 49ers are circling on that side of the ball to see, how they go about attacking that guy on the Chiefs defense?
So it starts with Chris Jones. He's the obvious big name on that Chiefs defense, and they just signed him to a huge contract before the season. And as mentioned, the 49ers have struggled with blocking, mostly on that interior during this postseason. Well, they're not going to have it very easy this time around. Jones is going to make an impact as usual. And for the Chiefs, he's going to have to because they are a little banged up on that defensive line. Now, Charles Omenihu is now out for this Super Bowl. So they're going to need his presence to be felt. Another name to watch out for is Trent McDuffie, all-pro corner. He's going to be covering the slot. Now, the 49ers like to mix things up. They don't keep things the same. They usually have Ayuk at the X, but they'll line him up slot. They'll line up Debo slot. What does McDuffie do? Does he shadow? Does he stay within his position? He's made a big impact, and L'Jarius Sneed, he's been good in the past. hasn't been as good this year, but they're going to need McDuffie's all-world play to limit this team.
Definitely. I completely agree with you. I like the two guys you mentioned, the corners, L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie. McDuffie this year, 5 forced fumbles, 3 sacks. L'Jarius Sneed has 2 interceptions, 14 pass deflections, and the other guy in the secondary is safety Justin Reed, who led the team in tackles to 95 this year. He also had an interception and 3 sacks on the season. That secondary is going to give, I think, Brock Purdy a lot of problems. I think the 49ers are very good at putting him in good situations where it's kind of point throws, where every play it's just kind of muscle memory. I'm just going to throw to a point, and my guy I know is going to be there. The Chiefs are going to try to confuse the heck out of Brock Purdy. And like you said, if he's going to have to run from Chris Jones the entire time, that's just another thing that's going to be in his head. These last 2 playoff games for the Niners, they've started very, very slow on offense. They really have not gotten it going until you get into that second half. In both games, 2 picks were dropped from Purdy. Purdy was just trying to get it to the other team, and the defensive backs dropped it. If the Chiefs can convert one of those, then this is going to be a long day for Brock Purdy. And so because of that, I think it's got to be McCaffrey, Debo, run the ball effectively to start out, get on those long scoring drives if you can for the 49ers to limit the mistakes that Brock Purdy can make.
Another thing to look out for is McCaffrey, like as a receiver out of the backfield, or even just as a runner in general. Who's going to keep an eye on him to make sure that he's not making explosive plays? Because with McCaffrey, you give him open space against a guy, he'll train out those extra 2-3 yards. And in a game like this, which could potentially be a defensive grinder, those extra yards mean a whole lot. So look for guys like Nick Bolton and Drew Tranquil in that middle. Who's going to watch out for him? And are they going to, be all over the field, like they have been, right? Or are the 49ers going to out-scheme them? It's going to be a very interesting, coordinator versus coordinator battle, or play caller versus play caller battle, to be more specific. Because these 2 units have been forces this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, I mean, coordinator Steve Spagnuolo to me is the name. Obviously, it's Andy Reid and Mahomes, but he's been so good for the Chiefs. I think he's going to deserve MVP if they end up winning this game, just because of how well he's positioned that defense to go up against some pretty good offenses in the playoffs. And it's been the same story throughout the rest of the regular season, too.
Mm-hmm. So, huge matchup there. The other side of the ball is going to be very interesting because these are 2 units that are regarded as elite, but haven't always lived up to that standard this year. We're going to talk about the KC offense versus San Francisco defense. But we're going to start with the offense, of course. And all season, the theme has been Mahomes' receivers ain't doing nothing for him. What has changed this postseason that has allowed Mahomes to get this team to the Super Bowl despite this subpar offense?
Well, I think number one, Travis Kelce has been a lot better than he had been in the regular season. This was definitely his worst regular season of his career, certainly in recent years. And he has had a resurgence in the playoffs. They've done a better job of getting him the ball in space, and he's done a great job of getting yards after catch. And so it starts with him. Then you get contributions from other guys like Isaiah Pacheco, the second-year running back out of Rutgers. We love Rutgers here. Second year in the league, he runs incredibly hard. The running game has really gotten going a bit more in the playoffs. And then you have the wide receivers that have contributed, like Rashee Rice, the rookie receiver, who had 938 yards this season, 7 touchdowns. Another guy very good in open space. They've done a great job of getting him the ball. And then you have Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who, the king of drops, has made 2 really crucial catches in the postseason, including the one to ice the game against the Ravens. So the short answer is just everyone has been able to step up a bit more than they had in the regular season. And, it's not just those guys. Mahomes has been a lot better. One of the big things for me this postseason with him, he has completely eliminated his turnovers. There were times in the regular season where he just seemed kind of careless with the ball and he would just kind of throw it up, hoping that one of his guys can make a play. I think now he's become a lot smarter at knowing how and when to get certain guys the ball throughout the game. And credit Andy Reid, too. I think this is something that they were building towards all season, being ready for the playoffs. And now they're showing that all of that was just a learning curve. Now they're ready to go.
Yeah, you could say Mahomes has been more careful this season, but you could also probably say that he probably expected to be here, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, now it's time to start actually playing careful." So at least he made the adjustment switch, right? Yes. So I love that analysis of the Chiefs offense, but there's a key here that we haven't discussed yet, and that's Joe Tooney on the offensive line. The last thing that report that we heard was that he was out of a, if there was a practice, he would have not participated, and that was uh, last Friday. So, uh, how big of an impact would Tooney not playing be for this offense?
It would be huge. That interior offensive line with him at guard and Creed Humphrey at center is definitely the strength of this Chiefs offensive line. Kind of going into the talk about the San Francisco defense a little bit. In my opinion, the biggest matchup on with this KC offense, San Francisco defense is going to be the edge rushers of San Francisco and the tackles. And so if Joe Tooney is out, that's just going to put more emphasis on the tackles needing to step up. And I think that's going to be a big risk for the Chiefs if they have to do that.
Yeah, Jawan Taylor has committed lots of penalties this year. He was the
guy. The most penalties.
So, yeah, very on point there. Yeah, he's the guy that always had the early starts, especially early in the season. If you watch the season opener, that was a theme throughout the entire season. And you got Donovan Smith on the other side, who's just kind of shown his age this season. But he's been serviceable, which is enough when you have three amazing interior linemen like the Chiefs do normally. So enough about the Chiefs offense for now. Let's go over to the San Francisco defense. So like I had mentioned, the stars all over the field on this defense, like on paper, like one of maybe the best defensive line in the league, maybe best linebacking core. Secondary, quite shaky, especially if Hufanga now out. What player are you looking to on the 49ers, to make the biggest impact in slowing down Mahomes?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nick Bosa, the former second overall pick, he's been doing a lot of talking, saying that the Chiefs tackles all they do is hold, and so I think he's going to be huge. That game against the Ravens, one of the things that was very obvious was just that they were not getting any pressure on Mahomes throughout that game. Now the Ravens, the difference is their pass rush strength comes on the interior. The Niners is different. They get pass rush from those exterior guys, from the edge, like led by Nick Bosa. You mentioned Chase Young before, right? But Bosa is going to be the guy, if he's matched up with either Taylor or Smith, can he consistently win that matchup to put Mahomes under pressure? The thing about the Niners that's different about the Ravens is that they only rush 4 most of the time. So that means there's only 4 guys that are going after the quarterback. They don't blitz as often as a team like Baltimore does. If they can get that pressure with 4, that'll be huge, because I think other guys around the defense are going to be able to step up, especially against the Kansas City defense that hasn't been great this year. Their linebackers are phenomenal. Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, the best duo in the league. He's like you said, the secondary is a little bit rough, but we just talked about how the Chiefs receivers aren't the best. I think this game for the Chiefs on offense is going to be focused much more in the middle of the field, looking for Travis Kelce and the other tight ends, and in the backfield, looking at the running game with Isaiah Pacheco. And so for me, Nick Bosa is the guy that if he can consistently win, it's going to be tough because he also doesn't defend the run very well. But if the Chiefs are put in those obvious passing situations, Nick Bosa is going to be a big guy that can, really make something happen for that defense.
I'm looking to a guy that's not one of their stars that could potentially make an impact. Diamador Lenore. And the reason I mention his name is because he's been the most exposed player on that 49ers defense this season. He's frequently targeted because you got Charvarius Ward on the other side. And, of course, those phenomenal linebackers have limited tight end play, which could potentially mean Travis Kelce doesn't have his best game like he's been playing all postseason. But Lenore has been targeted very heavily. As you mentioned, the Chiefs receivers have not been very good apart from Rashee Rice. Do the Chiefs try to mix and match, matchups, try to put people in motion, try to get Rice on Lenore? Or do they try to just have their guys, try to outman guys like Lenore and their other secondary members? If the Chiefs' second and third receivers can get separation, get open versus Lenore, Like that's a big matchup. If Lenore has the upper hand, well, where are the Chiefs going to expose? They're going like obviously Mahomes can work his magic. He'll have some runs up the middle, and the Chiefs are always innovative with their play calls, but it doesn't really seem like they have a ton of matchup edges for their offense versus their defense. Where the 49ers are weak, the Chiefs can't really take advantage of. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, you're exactly right, and it's interesting because the Niners' defense has definitely been a bit weaker. I mean, like that's the other difference between this game and 4 years ago. 4 years ago, it was high-powered Chiefs offense, really, really good 49ers defense. This year, it's really, really good high-powered 49ers offense on paper, and they have been throughout the regular season, versus a really stringent Chiefs defense. Well, the Chiefs' offense has not been very good this year, and even despite some more of their successes, they are not very explosive. They really try to wear you down. They like to go on those 10 plus play, 8-minute drives that go all the way down the field. It was their first drive against the Ravens was something like 8 plays. It went 7, 8 minutes, and they ended up getting a touchdown. That's what they're going to try to do throughout the rest of this game. They want to slow it down a lot more to make the 49ers really have to think about what they have to do, and they want to take control of the game in that way. It's definitely going to be interesting. I like your pick of Lenore. I think the other guy you mentioned, Travarius Ward, former Chief, who won the Super Bowl with them against the 49ers in Super Bowl 54. I think he's going to be big. And we talk a lot about the turnover battle in every football game. Travarius Ward, 5 interceptions this year. If Mahomes does try to take a risk at one point and attack Ward, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not he can come up with a turnover.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I do want to mention, I'm going to correct myself here. I said that the Chiefs offense doesn't have any way of exposing the 49ers, but looking back in this postseason, Aaron Jones went for over 100 rush yards versus Niners in the opening round. And then last game versus the Lions, they totaled almost 200 rushing yards. They got 182 total. Jameson Williams' big run helped with those matters, but they've been gashed on the ground this postseason. And like you said, they like to sustain long drives. Pacheco is a bruiser, and they love feeding him the ball. He runs super hard, and you have the potential of Jerick McKinnon coming back off IR for this game to help spell some of his carries. So that is an avenue that the Chiefs can expose, but it does require them to have the upper hand in the game early.
Yeah, and like you were alluding to, the reason for that is really the 49ers defensive line is built to rush the passer. And usually that works because they're usually up by a lot, right? Their offense is usually getting going very early in games. They get these leads, and then these guys like Bosa and Arik Armstead and Javon Hargrave, they can go after the quarterback. That has not been the case in the playoffs. And now listen, the 49ers defense has held their own at points, in the second half, like we mentioned, when the 49ers have been making these comebacks. But like you said, you mentioned him, Isaiah Pacheco. We're getting ahead of ourselves, but I would take overs in him for this game because I think they're going to give him a lot of carries, try to get into those third and manageables for then Mahomes just to pick apart that defense.
Yes, and we'll get into some interesting bets in a little bit. But first, let's talk about on a scale from 1 to 10. How excited are you for the Super Bowl?
I'm pretty excited. I'm always excited for the Super Bowl. I feel like when it initially started, a lot of people wanted Ravens, Lions, or some, one of those teams to make it in, have it a little bit different. I think people were a little disappointed that the Chiefs are in again, although I think other people are very excited that the Chiefs are in. So I'd probably say like an 8. I mean, 8 or 9, like even as we get closer to it, I'm getting more and more excited. But, I think the thing that people I think can agree on is that these are two very good teams. I don't think anyone would say that these two teams didn't deserve to be there. If you want to talk about whether or not, like in storyline or just personal feelings, who you wanted there, I completely agree with that. But these are two really, really good teams. And it's an interesting chess match that's going to happen throughout the game. And so I think it's going to be a very, very exciting game. And yeah, it's also in Vegas, which I think adds to the excitement as well. I think it'll be a really cool atmosphere. So what about you? What would you say your excitement level is?
Off the top of my head, I would give this Super Bowl a 6. The reason it gets higher than average is because of the matchup itself with the coaching matchup, the players on each side, lots of superstars in this game, and like you said, two very good teams, two teams expected to be in Super Bowl contention before the season, so it's going to be a heavyweight battle. I just wish it had that kind of like underdog or David versus Goliath kind of feel. It doesn't really have that. So there's no like I love those Super Bowls where there's clearly a team that like there's a
Yeah.
villain team versus a team that you want to root for. I think either way, I'll be kind of like, well, like I wasn't surprised that
Yeah.
happened.
I guess
But
they won. Yeah.
these last few Super Bowls have spoiled us in terms of like
Yeah.
game quality. So if we get anything close to that, then at the end of the day, I'll be satisfied because either way, I'll be missing football come
Yes.
next week.
Of course. Oh yeah. Already missing it, thinking about it ending. But I agree with you about I like the way you put it that like it's kind of like both teams are the villain. I think I don't think people hate on the 49ers as much. I think the reason for that is just it's kind of like the Steelers making it back. Like they've just won a lot and they've been in the Super Bowl several times in the past decade, and so I think the Chiefs people are more like, oh, I can't believe we're seeing again. So yeah, in that regard, this was a very predictable matchup, and so if this does end up being not a sort of not great game, I can definitely see people being like, oh, this wasn't that great a Super Bowl, it wasn't that exciting, blah, blah, blah. But I do think it's going to be really close. I don't know, I have a feeling about the type of game we're going to see. I think it's going to be pretty low scoring, and I think one or two mistakes are really going to contribute to who wins and loses. But I do think it's going to be both teams really just jockeying for position early on, and I think it's going to be very tense, which I think should add to people's excitement level as it goes on.
Yeah, and there's a potential for a defensive game, potential for an offensive game. It's like who knows what to expect in terms of game flow. Like which unit will take over. It's going to be very, very, very interesting to see. Right. So we're going to make our predictions, but I figured let's add in because most of us will probably be throwing a couple bets on the Super Bowl. So
yeah.
Any interesting bets that you found? You didn't necessarily have to place it, but like anything like weird or funny that you saw out there that you could bet on that you came across?
I mean, I always like the last Super Bowl that these two teams played in 54. I bet on a Kyle Juszczyk touchdown at like plus 2,200 and it hit. I don't think the odds are quite that bad this time, but I think that's a really fun one to do. I think first touchdown is always a really fun one. I think there's some interesting ones like Deebo Samuel at plus 1,000, Brandon Ayuk at plus 1,100, even Travis Kelce at plus 800. I think is really, really good value. The running backs are obviously the best ones in that regard. I think one of the other fun ones is like over under like jersey number of first touchdown score. I think is a really fun one. And obviously,
yes. So I'm going to cut you off here. I want to touch on that really quick. So
yeah,
I noticed that because I looked at a couple different sports books for these bets. Most sports books have this line for jersey number set at 19.5. DraftKings has it at 22.5. And at first I thought it was a value, but then I looked at the players and all of them are on defense from 20 to 22. So they're very clever by DraftKings to do that, but like don't be fooled by it. Like it makes no difference whatsoever from Samuel to McCaffrey. That would be the guys that could score. Unless Trent McDuffie returns one, which highly doubtful. But just wanted to throw that one out there real quick because I noticed that.
I like that one.
Yeah. So I'll give you first my top 3 picks. I made some bets already, and I'll go through the 3 that I like the most. First one, my third most highest bet was shortest touchdown under 1.5 yards on DraftKings is at minus 145. Most sportsbooks have it at minus 165. You get a QB sneak. There's so many options for 1 yard touchdown, right? And it's the shortest TD, which means it can happen at any time. And with these offenses, they're all likely to get towards the goal line. So I like this play a lot. My second favorite one was DraftKings total kicking points or total kicking yards under 121 and a half. Most most books I've seen as low as 107 and a half. Most have it like
Wow.
115, 116. DraftKings got all the way at 121. So I'll take those extra yards. And I think these are two teams that like to go for it. So that kind of aids in my decision. My favorite bet is on Caesars. It's the Chiefs to call the first timeout of the game at plus 105. Most sports books have it as the favorite, but they have this one as the underdog here. And it, I mean, it could every way makes sense. It just depends on who gets off to the faster start. But at plus
Yeah.
money and like the
Good value.
potential for nice to roll on offense early and the Chiefs to be caught off guard, it's got good potential. Now, as far as the funniest bets that I saw, well, look, if you want to look at wacky bets, you just gotta go to Caesars because Caesars has an entire cross sport section. They have cross sport, NBA, NHL, soccer, golf, UFC, NASCAR. Like, this is like they have. What will be more, Christian McCaffrey rushing yards or National Rugby League points on March 2nd? Like, what more?
Oh my God.
Deebo Samuel longest reception or Redwoods lacrosse total goals versus the Cannons? Like what? Like someone out there is looking up these spreads and calculating it. I can't do it. Like
I can't now. Oh my gosh.
It is absolutely nuts. And besides, I don't think I'd want to bet on something where like, oh, you get a result and you have to wait like a month for your upper result.
Yeah, right.
It's ridiculous. Go check out Caesars if you're interested in that. And last thing I'll say is if you want to bet the coin toss, bet it on DraftKings because they have it at plus 100 each. Don't do it on the other side because you're an idiot.
Yes, good call. Good call. Who do you I want each of us let's each pick first touchdown. Who do we think?
First touchdown of the game. I think based on what I said, I think the 49ers are going to roll down the field, and I'm going to go with George Kittle.
Okay, I like that. I'm going to go. It's not the best odds. I think I'd probably bet someone that's better odds, but I'm going to go the obvious one. I'm going to go Pacheco. I think they go down there, and I think they run it in.
Yeah, in all likelihood, it'll probably be McCaffrey. He's usually the tone setter down there.
That's true.
But if it's like Jawan Jennings, man, like I'm going to throw a chair.
That'd be great. Jawan Jennings over under for receiving yards, I believe, is like 12 and a half.
Yeah, I actually bet him under on receptions. So I just think that he's going to be out of the pecking order now that Deebo's healthy. So don't get fooled.
Very true. Very
true.
Who
knows? Let's predict the Super Bowl. We've talked about both units. We've talked coordinators. We know how big the stakes are. We know about the experience. We know that both sides have motivation. Obviously, why not? You're in the freaking Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, only one team can win. So I want to hear who you think is going to win the Super Bowl.
I think this is such an interesting matchup because I think it's similar to last year's in that I think there's one team that is just more talented, and I think the Niners are a more talented team. I think when you look up and down their roster, they just have more superstars. The way they built their team, they've just been able to accrue a better collection of players. And you started at the beginning, but then the Chiefs have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. And the truth is, like, watching this team against the Ravens, it was just very clear that you're not going to beat them with just talent. They've been there. They've done that. Like they just understand. And it's all of them. It's not just those two. It's everyone on the team. It's Steve Spagnuolo. It's Travis Kelce. It's even the rookies. We saw guys in the secondary for the Chiefs last year in the Super Bowl that were rookies play really well. Now you got a guy like Rashee Rice on offense who's been a major contributor. All these guys, they teach these guys so well how to play in these big moments. Like I said before, I think it's going to be pretty low scoring. The over-under is right now 47.5. I think I would take the under in that. I think the Chiefs defense is going to give Brock Purdy some trouble, especially early on. And I think it's going to be similar to that Ravens game in that the Chiefs are going to go on long drives. Whether or not the 49ers can stand up in the red zone, I think it's going to be really important to be able to keep those touchdown drives to just field goal drives. But ultimately, I just can't bet against Mahomes and Andy Reid again. I mean, they've just proven it so many times that they can go into these big games and they can pull out these wins. Couple that with the guy on the other side, Kyle Shanahan, has kind of shown that he can't pull out these wins. Not that it's all his fault, but the offense coordinator in Super Bowl 51 with the Falcons, and then losing in Super Bowl 54. And so I think low scoring, tight game, but I'm going to go with the Chiefs pulling it out 20-17.
Either way, really, it's hard to say picking either side is unjustified. We know like how talented both teams are. Both teams have plenty of playoff experience before. And you can look at the 49ers and say they've gotten off to slow starts this postseason, and a team like the Chiefs, you can't do that against, which is true. But I also look at it as the 49ers being like a team of destiny this year. I just look at this whole roster, how it's come together, and how there's still some remnants, some key pieces of that team that are still there from 4 years ago that still feel that loss, where they had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter before it came apart. And you got to think that that's still fresh in their mind, and they can relay that over these next 2 weeks. That like we need to get our revenge. We need to get that. Like, from the Chiefs side, it's hard to bet against Mahomes and Reed, but we've also seen that they're beatable in the postseason. They're not invincible by any means. And what it comes down to for me, when it comes to not the motivation, but the actual sides of this game, all the units are strong. I just feel like the Chiefs playmakers on offense, they just don't have the right personnel to take advantage of the 49ers weaknesses. And you're asking an older Travis Kelce and a rookie receiver to be your top options. I think there could be some frustration from Mahomes here. I'm going to go 49ers 21, Chiefs 20, frustrating everybody that put the push on.
Oh, man.
That would send shockwaves everywhere. But
that'd be crazy.
It's going to be a classic. It won't be the most memorable in terms of the highlights, but it'll be remembered as a very, very good game.
Definitely. And, we touched on it a bit before, obviously, that this being a rematch, and you brought it up again, the key guys that were there. And that is something that's true. Is I can guarantee you, Kyle Shanahan, 49ers coach, George Kittle, probably Deebo Samuel, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, all of these guys have been thinking about that last Super Bowl for the last 4 years, probably like every day for the last 4 years. They've been probably, I don't know if they have been trying to avoid watching it, or, maybe they've watched it and tried to think, oh my gosh, if only I did this, or if I did this, we get there. Now they get that opportunity to go back, do it, win again. And not only that, they get to do it against the team that beat them the last time. I think that is a huge motivator. I think it's something that can either be good or bad. It could be something where, maybe you're just putting too much energy into it and then you don't focus enough. Or it could be something that the Chiefs are just kind of overwhelmed by when you think about a guy like George Kittle. I mean, George Kittle, he's going to go out, he's going to pancake the first guy he sees. Just, there's that great video of him at the end of the last Super Bowl, I think, kind of saying on the sideline, like, I'm going to be back here. I'm going to do everything I can to get back here. And now he's back. And you make a good point. If you think these guys, they're not just going to let that opportunity go. And so it's going to be a really fun game, and it's going to be really interesting to see those guys go at it. Like I said, I don't know if I could bet against Mahomes, but there's just so many little interesting things about this game that I think is going to really make it. Like I said, I don't know if it'll be a classic in terms of the highlights. I don't think we're going to see many splashy plays. I don't. I think this is going to be a very frustrating game to watch almost, because it's going to be a very football heavy game, but I think it's going to be very close the entire time. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Wow, just talking about it has brought my excitement level up to a 7 now.
There you go. I think before we go, let's each pick an MVP.
Okay. By the way, I forgot to mention for the bets. Sam Donald at MVP has been getting a lot of bets. Apparently, it's a big
Wow.
live sports book. So
That's
uh,
funny. Oh my
that's interesting. Well, I've got I got 49ers to win in a close battle, and I think that McCaffrey will end up making a difference if that is the case, and he'll be the MVP.
I'm gonna go. The obvious one is Mahomes, but I'm not gonna go the obvious one. I'm gonna go with Kelsey because I could see a situation where it's kind of like a hotly contested game, similar to like Super Bowl 53 when Julian Edelman won, just because he had like 10 catches for like 100 yards. I could see like it being kind of defensive like that, and Travis Kelsey ends up getting like 10 catches for 100 something, and maybe one of the touchdowns, and he just ends up winning it.
Mm-hmm. Over under Taylor Swift shown on screen 5 or more times, five or less.
5. Oh, that's a pretty good line. I'm honestly, I'm gonna go with. Well, wait. Does like if they win, does that count, or is it like just during the game?
Um, well, that's what goes into the bet, man. You don't know what's
if,
gonna happen.
if it's just during the game, I'm definitely gonna say under. But if it's like including like all the after stuff, I would probably say over. But that's interesting. She's flying back from Tokyo to be there. Good lesson in time zones for everyone involved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Reputation 2 is out, or whatever it's called.
No, all right. Well,
Okay, I think that's a good sign that this episode's over. Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed, and we hope you like our predictions. And let's enjoy the last football game of the season. So, I'm Schup.
I'm Tion.
And thank you for tuning in. Catch us in the off season. Peace.